What is up, Rad Potential YouTube? Welcome to today's video. The old FD RX7 really putting the traction down here in the grass out here, even on these street tires, really making me want to get an FD rally car. If only they weren't so ungodly expensive. What are we doing today? This is going to be the last video that the black FD runs and drives in its current setup. And I just want to talk a little bit about this setup because the next video we're going to really do a deep dive into this engine and the condition of this engine before, yes, we're taking the engine out of the FD, perfectly good running and driving, 300 and some change horsepower, single turbo ripper of a right-hand drive car. And I'm going to drop that engine, turbo, the whole setup, tune, everything into the Drift Car FC. That also has an REW currently. So let's look under the hood of this deal, and then we'll go take this thing for a rip. Check it out. This is skills. YouTube, filmer, one-man show skills, putting hood props up. Now, this is an REW. Stock coils, Power FC, stock harness that's been simplified, no rat's nest stuff. Fairly simple setup. It's got an excessive lower intake manifold, and all four injectors are actually in the secondary position in this car. So it does not have primary injectors down at the bottom, which means there's only one fuel rail. So there's no primary fuel rail in this setup. It works fairly good. Quick to start. Everything seems right. The injector dynamics injectors really make a huge difference over the old school, whether you have side feed injectors or just an old school, bigger, low impedance, like Bosch big unit. As far as the rest of the car goes, stock battery location, upgraded stock location, intercooler. It's a much bigger one. We have an AST here. Looks like a air pump delete pulley on this thing. The car still does have AC and power steering. We've got a catch can back there, which is in a terrible spot because it's really hard to drain, but it is kind of nice that it's not. There's just a lot going on in this engine bay. I don't know what turbo this is, but it spools relatively fast and it pulls relatively hard. It's a little bit bigger, I think, than the one that is on the RX7, but this is a 70 front side, and we'll have to look at it when we pull it off for the back housing, but we can check that out when we get there. Some polished, nice, clean intercooler stuff. The engine is a street-ported REW. It has i-rotary apex seals, and this engine has been running in this car since I put it in approximately 15 months ago. Okay, the car's made 2 trips to Deals Gap, been driven around a bunch of car shows around here. My buddy who owns it likes to rip on it, and in its current state, it rips. But it's been in the car for 14 months. It's got probably 8,000 miles on it or so, 2 or 3 oil changes, and it's been ran explicitly on renewable lubricants i-rotary premix in this car. So I'm interested to see, when we pull this engine out, to put it into this, what the inside of this engine looks like. We're not going to be tearing the whole engine down. I just want to get this out. We're going to have the turbo manifold off. We'll look inside the exhaust ports. We'll be able to see the wear on the housings, see the wear on the apex seals, and then we'll take that thing and drop it in here. So I'm excited for that. But otherwise on the car, it's pretty much a stock FD. It has, I think, some like semi-blown out HKS coilovers on it. It rides kind of terribly. It's got an exhaust leak right now. Racing beat catback. Just the things that when you drive your car and you use it for a year and it's a rotary and you just change the oil and enjoy it, and it's got 160,000 kilometers on it, it needs some maintenance. So we're going to be putting this engine in the red FC. Then we're going to be doing a full refresh on the black FD. So if you're here to see the FC get built, that's going to happen first. And then I actually have a new engine in the shop ready for this. We're going to do some bushing work on this car, diff bushings, fix some stuff up. We're really going to go through the suspension on this thing and make sure that it is dialed. We'll get a bigger Mazda Speed power plant frame. We'll do all that stuff and make this thing a ripper, plus the new engine, plus a new turbo setup. It should be a super good car. So let's jump in this thing. Dog's gonna come along. We're gonna take it for a quick rip down the street. Y'all get to experience the sounds and greatness that come out of this single turbo, externally wastegated REW FD RX7 before we take it apart, because we're going to take apart a perfectly good running and driving car for science. It's going to be great. And mainly, The reason that I had this engine and wanted to build this engine and put it in this car was to do the test I just mentioned. I wanted to run an engine specifically on a certain premix for a certain amount of miles where I knew the start condition of the engine, right? So I resurfaced the housings. I knew what they looked like. They looked great. The apex seals are brand new. The rest of everything brand new. We put it together, stuck it in here. Known amount of miles, we get to see how much wear it is. Being an engineer, I like to do that sort of thing. And fortunately, my buddy, we had a setup ready to go with that engine and everything that we could pop it in here. And I was like, hey, just enjoy your car for a year. We'll put this engine in your drift car. And that was the initial plan for this engine anyways, was to go in here. But we just ran it in this car for a while. So let's corral the dog and let's go for a rip. Don't worry, we're not going to be doing any street donuts. I'm honestly was a little bit afraid to do a donut in the grass in the FD, but I knew my buddy wouldn't quite mind because the last time he was out here in this car, I think he cut a nice donut right over here in it. So I don't feel that bad. We'll get it washed up. We'll get the grass out of that nice NT03 back there. And just, oh man. Let me tell you, I've been around some super nice FDs. A lot of them. The blue one, the yellow one, the LS swapped car, all these other super nice FDs. And something about just like a semi-ratty, all one color, but still kind of rough FD, just, man, I could probably own one like this because I would love to take it out in my yard and do donuts. It's hard to own a nice FD because then it's like my Corvette. It just stays on the pavement and becomes a pavement princess, albeit we drive it pretty hard. But let's get behind the wheel of this thing. I'll quit rambling. Letty! One thing that's always hard to get used to, guys, is driving on the right side of the road. I would never say that a right-hand drive car is necessarily like a huge negative to me. It's just like mildly inconvenient. That, and you can really tell, like in this car, I don't know if the right-hand drives or if it's because it's a 2+2, like with the back seats, that the seat sits further forward. But this steering wheel, if this wasn't in here, I would not be able to drive this car. I don't fit in here very well, and it's just crazy how small these things are, you know, compared to some of the bigger Corvettes, first gen RX7, RX8. Even the dog, she just looks massive inside this thing. Versus when we were in that FC, there's tons of room. Alright, so let's see how Letty does with like 300 horsepower. She is sitting. Normally I'd try to make her lay down, but she's probably going to fall back in the seat. If I roll into it nice and slow, she didn't fall over. Look at that, getting your race car legs, aren't you? Just like people get their sea legs when they're on a boat and then they walk on dry land and then they're like floating. She's getting her race car legs. What do you think, dog? Think this thing's too loud? It's pretty loud with the windows down, isn't it? That external wastegate gets to rolling and then you're just eating it up. Especially when you get next to a guardrail or like a forest or a big rock wall. Right, you need to sit. it's freaking tough getting out of this thing. Come on, lady. I wish I was as nimble as you, huh? Alright, y'all. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know this was a short one. Not too crazy working on stuff, not too crazy really going over stuff, but I felt like this car deserved a pat on the back for having made it 1 year, 2 deals gap trips, lots of shreddage, and this is basically the first like pretty big FD that I've actually worked on and done a whole lot of work for, as in built the engine, set up the turbo kit, got everything going, and it's finally coming full circle where we're going to improve it more, and we're going to learn from what we built in this thing over the past year and how it held up. And I think that's going to be a huge value added to not only the community, but also to me as somebody who likes these engines, likes to build these engines and uses them in my car, for understanding how these engines wear based on the variables that you put into them. So I'm excited, and you guys should be excited too, because in, like I said, the next video, this thing is going to get all blown apart, and then we're going to check the inside of that engine out, and then the very next video after that, we're going to blow apart the red FC, which is on the other side of my house. I don't know why I just pointed out in the yard where it was. And then we're going to switch it around and play musical engines, and then we'll get the red FC ripping and sounding exactly like this. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for the support. If you want to learn about these engines, go check out the other videos on the channel. There's plenty of other videos detailing how to build these things, clearance side seals, the whole deal. If you have questions about your specific build that you want to ask me, problems with your car, etc., go check out the Patreon. Not only do I help people fix their own car, but if you have questions, for example, we've been doing a lot of theoretical thinking and talking about how I'm going to build my hybrid engine for the RX7, which goes on over there, because a lot of that stuff, there's a lot of back-end stuff before we get to go rip this RX7 with a turbo that needs to happen, so that I can make sure that all my science and equations are done, so when we go to solve the problem, which is 400 horsepower turbo RX7, it ideally, we get 90% of the way there, and then we'll figure the last 10% out as we're doing it. So go check out the Patreon. It's an awesome community. Videos go up when everyone over there asks me questions, send me messages, and I answer the questions in a video. It's super cool. It's kind of like a live stream, but not live. It's pretty neat. So with that, thank you guys again so much for the support. Keep it rad. And I'm sorry, but we're going to take apart a running car. Peace. Letty, you didn't just come over here and like throw up because you went for a crazy ride in an RX7 again, did you? Look at you. Trooper. She was out running around the yard while I was doing donuts, because that's what she does. She likes to chase stuff. It's pretty fun. But she's wore out when we got her in the car. But Letty, you hungry? Me too. Peace, guys.